First challenge of the day, first test of the day, finish a run before the sun comes up, Point Davis. Today's a pretty cool day. Looking forward to doing another interview for the 12 Mavens groups. Every month we do these videos picking the brains of highly successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, experts on different topics. I think maybe one of the most recommended books that I tell people to read is entrepreneurs is a book called Built to Sell, which is a book all about building a business in a way that helps you be able to sell it. I've recommended this book so many times over the years. The podcast is #2 most recommended podcast by Forbes for entrepreneurs. And so today I'm shooting an interview video, picking the brain of the author of that book. And then I'm taking off from there. I'm gonna speak to about 100 business school students and hopefully give them a little swift kick in the So the flavor of the day right now in YouTube and other places where you see, influencers in the entrepreneurial space, it seems to be a lot about grind and hustle and working your face off. And I know I put in my share of all three of those things in the early years in building my business. Your book talks about building a business that thrives without you. So, everybody would love that scenario, and most business owners, would love to live that experience as a business owner. But why is it that they should believe that that is the way to go?
Well, I mean, I think part of the grind is that as entrepreneurs, we get to offer too many things. For most business owners, I mean, Michael Gerber said it well. I think we start in this kind of entrepreneurial seizure, right? Where you're really good at something, you're good at an industry, you've got like industry experience. You're like, why don't I start a business in this space? And that's great, but what it does is make you really good at lots of things in that industry, and it tempts you to sell too many things. And when you sell too many things, employees can't really get good at following you. And so you end up with a business where you're the linchpin. You're the one that really that is the glue that holds the thing together. And that means you never really fulfill the potential of the business because you cap out the number of hours in the day. You can never really raise capital or sell the company because it's too dependent on you. And so I think once you have the discipline, Franklin. I think discipline's it sounds a bit pedantic as a word, but I think it's actually really important. Once you have the discipline to sell less things to more people, I think that's the first step to creating a business that's not so grindy, doesn't take quite as long. So I think that's a long way to answer.
I'm here at Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida, about to give a keynote to this room here. The event's about sustainability. I'm going to talk about the sustainability of these people. It's pretty cool. The event's sold out, so I'm excited.
Now I'd like to introduce to you our guest speaker. We have Jeff Davis, and Jeff Davis, by his 30s, was a serial entrepreneur. He had already built multiple national companies and has been featured in Fortune magazine, CNN Money, quoted by Inc. magazine, and featured in countless other news stories. In 2014, he successfully sold his national medical legal trial presentation company to a biotech, which then became publicly traded soon after. He founded the national, by invitation only, community of CEOs and entrepreneurs known as the 12 Mavens, which the Business Journal describes as the secret society of CEOs. And he is the founder of the popular annual strategic planning event, Plan the Attack. He's dissected human cadavers at a medical school. He's competed as a skateboarder, He is about to take his family to live in 30 countries over the next year, and in between it all shares his unique perspective of the world in his keynote speeches. Jeff, welcome. Thank you.
thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here to speak to you guys. You're Flagler. And so I have this obsession to figure it out. How do you make it last? How do you sustain that full capacity? So I do things like I go out every month, I shoot these videos picking the brains of highly successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, experts on different topics. I read books, remember The Thirsty Brain? And so what I'm going to share with you are at least 7 ways that I would say are the principles that I found for how to make improvement last. If you're taking notes, write this down. The first thing is, it's worth it. What you're going for is worth it. So here's what I mean by that. If you aren't going after everything that you feel you should and you could, it's because it isn't worth it to you yet. So the thing you need to do is take the time to figure out what is worth it. What makes it so you don't want to hit the snooze in the morning. Right? I'm not saying what your professors, I hope I don't step on toes, but not what your professors think is the reason why. Not what your parents have always told you is the reason why. Not what sounds good to say to other people that sounds so noble is the reason why. But, like, for real, what's really worth it to you to get up and do all that stuff, to get through all the punches in the face? Right? Something that's bigger than you. Okay, number 2, you're worth it. The first one is it's worth it. The external thing you're chasing is worth it. The next is internal, that you yourself are worth it. You need to get to work on that one, because what you think you are worth becomes your level of confidence. Your level of confidence becomes your entire outlook towards everything that you do. And your outlook towards everything that you do becomes your entire experience of your life. Is it important? Number 3, the habit of discipline. The habit of discipline. Motivation is nice, a pep talk or a book or a video, it's nice, but it doesn't last. Mindset changes without behavioral changes don't last. To make that point, I snapped off this picture out in the hallway right before my talk. What's so funny? What's so funny? To show, use my ripped 6-pack abs to make a point. So what if you wanted to have ripped 6-pack abs, but then you said, well, I don't really have the discipline for full ripped 6-pack abs. What if I was just disciplined enough to get 1 ripped ab? Well, there you go, there it is. Let's give a hand for 1 ripped ab. Out of sight is out of mind. I happened to have loved over the last decade a team called the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah. You may remember that in 2016, not long ago, the Jaguars' record was 3-13. 3 wins, 13 losses. Now, if you watch those games like I did, you know that about 2 out of those 3 wins were a fluke. We won them by like a bad call from the ref, a Hail Mary bomb, we'll take it, whatever. The team was horrible, they could not win. Get rid of the coach, bring in a new leader, new coach. Season doesn't even start yet. The new leadership comes in, he has these sign guys come in and put up a sign on the locker room wall that says, win the division. Win the division. Right? These guys are coming in to win the division. We can't even get a freaking touchdown. What's he talking about? We can't win a game. They come in every morning. What do they see? Win the division. At the end of a day of practice, they walk out every day. What do they see? Win the division. Jaguars win 2017 AFC South division. Wait, as my daughter does. All right, out of sight, out of mind. Accountability is self-enforced, premeditated continuity. So let's say that this person on the far right is you on your climb up to the top of the mountain of what you hope to accomplish in your life. Everybody to the left of you would represent accountability. It's the difference between this scenario and that scenario. What if What if at the end of your life, when this does come, they play out this video of everything that your life could have been had you been operating at your highest level of what you were capable of doing. And you see the impact you could have made in the world. You see the kind of life you could have created for your family. Do you drop your head? Do you feel shame? Because I'm telling you, you have a lot of time left. I saw an interview with a billionaire who was near the end of his life, and he said he would trade all of his billions for one more shot at the age that you are right now. He would trade billions for exactly where you are and what you have right now. I heard a statistic one time that 160 people die every second. That means since the time I started here, like 6,000 people have died. So how are you going to use that time that you've got? Thank you. Questions?
What would you say your strengths and weaknesses are?
I would say one of my greatest strengths, this is going to sound weird, one of my greatest strengths is realizing how much I suck at so many things. Like, growing my company for over a decade, I had enough time to realize which things I'm really good at, which things I'm really bad at, and I'm really bad at a ton of stuff. I think one of my greatest strengths is being really clear about the things that I'm not great at, I'll never be great at, and getting out of the way, finding people who would be great at those things, and letting them run with it versus trying to pretend like I could be great at it.
How do you balance family life and entrepreneurial business?
As an entrepreneur, I think part of it is having this longer-term vision, being willing to do now what others won't, so later you can have what others can't. But believing in the vision, my wife, who's in the back there, put up with a ton of crap where I would come home, have dinner, and I'd go back to the office till 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, all the time. Did that for a few years, so I could tell she was kind of like, when does this get awesome? And then when I had the birth of my first child, for me that was a big, okay, you gotta figure this out. Most entrepreneurs never figure that, solve that riddle, and they just work to the bone forever. That's most business owners. I think the key, in a nutshell, I mean, I could spend days talking about the little nuances of it, but it's finding people to do the things, taking yourself out of more and more roles. You start off, you're doing everything, and you're working around the clock, because sometimes you have to. Any other questions?
What do you do to sustain your motivation? Like, what's your daily morning?
Yeah, for me personally, I run every morning, and my own challenge is to finish my run before the sun comes up. I used to be a snoozer, and so I talked about the discipline to develop new habits. I gave myself the belief snoozers are losers. I just made that up. I never saw it written on any sign or read it in any book. I just was like, that's going to be when the alarm goes off tomorrow morning, I'm going to hear my own voice go, snoozers are losers. I'm doing this without all the bad words I would probably throw in it to make it work better. But I saw it as like, that's going to be my first test of whether I'm actually going to do something or if I'm full of crap. I'm just blah, 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 blah. And so that's like, all right, this is your first test. How bad do you want it? So I do a run. While I'm on a run, I'm literally listening to interviews with entrepreneurs, speeches that are like motivational. I'll literally run and listen to commencement speeches at other people's graduations. Whatever it takes.
Yes, what has been the biggest obstacle you faced in your career thus far, and how did you overcome it?
I used to joke with my wife, I called myself the million obstacle man, because it was a ridiculous amount of obstacles. I mean, there were some times that there were so many obstacles, I'd just be like, you just don't want me to have money, is that it? You just want to make sure I never become sick, because it felt like that, because there's just so many obstacles. And so it's hard to pick just one because there are so many of them. Anybody that starts a business will tell you, it's just getting kicked in the face over and over and over again. I think my biggest obstacle was probably myself. My own belief of what I should expect. Sort of having limiting beliefs and then building up to what I felt was probable and doable and realistic for me. And the more I surround myself with people that are just at a whole nother level, and I see that's normal level to them, and then what I thought was so fancy is maybe not that big of a deal. And so an aspiration, something you aspire to, the aspiration becomes an expectation. There's a big difference when you aspire to it first, you just expect it. And for me, for years and years, my expectations were what I thought was more realistic. So I think like if I just, whatever my brain is gonna be at 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if I put that in 22-year-old me, I think that would be the biggest game changer of anything. Any book, any tactic, any strategy. Somebody else? Yes?
When you were getting your education, is there anything you contribute that's really helped you? And then if you could go back, what's something you in a class you would have wanted to take?
Like when I got my first job out of grad school, this was a master's degree in medical illustration. I got a master's degree medical illustration. I get my first job out of grad school doing medical illustration, and I remember looking around and thinking, if I can just go 3 months without them figuring out I have no clue what I'm doing, I'm golden. All right, thank you guys very much.